Jody, we're sitting here at the back of Burke Centre and under these beautiful sails and a blue sky, very Burke, isn't it?
Very Burke.
And I remember you were working here at one stage and you said to me at the front there, "Oh, Paul, I don't know the history of Burke." I said, "But Jody, you don't need to know the whole history of a place. You've got a story, so let's go inside." So we went inside, found a photograph on the wall of a family living in a tent or whatever, way out the back of Burke 120 years ago. And I said to you, "What do you see there?" And you began to look into the picture, not just at the picture. Okay.
That's
What
right.
happened?
I think I had a tear or two at the time. I saw a family living in some, what I'd call pretty tough conditions. They had a little lean-to, there was a swag of kids and mum and dad, and it made me realise they didn't have a lot of medical intervention or accessibility to what I thought. We lived isolated and we were only 30 k's out the road. And I looked at those children and I thought, now if that was me and they were my children in that story, my children wouldn't be here now, because we've had some pretty big, well, I don't know what you'd call them, but situations happen with the children and living rurally. Many and most of them have all been flown out on the flying doctors and that sort of thing. And I thought, what if one of those kids fell out of a tree and broke its leg? They wouldn't be here.
And Dad was away.
And Dad was away, yeah, he was away working. And yeah, it really struck true to me, I guess the isolation that we do have out here in Burke, and the reality of the circumstances that we do live in here in this world. So it spoke very deeply to my heart.
So you started to tell that story to other people coming through the centre. So you took your story and sort of overlaid it on that picture.
I did.
What happened?
Yeah, it was I guess a real change for me. As I said, I'd been walking through that centre for lots of years and looking at lots of pictures. And until I could understand the purpose of a story and what a story is, I could then open that picture up, say, and numerous pictures throughout the centre, which I then learned that, there's a story behind every photo in there. If you can grasp a hold of the reality of that story and not look at the picture but what the story that picture's telling you, you connect with people on a much deeper level. And as I said, I could recall going through the centre, and by the time we'd come to numerous photos and stories behind photos, there would often be lots of tears, because you can actually connect on a much deeper level.
So Jody, going back to your own story, you arrived in Burke with a bunch of little kids?
Yes, we had 3 little kids at that time.
From the Gold Coast?
From Kingscliff on the Tweed Coast. I came out to Burke sight unseen, used to growing up at the ocean, thought all water was clear.
Yeah.
And came in a flood, had no idea Coles wasn't around the corner. We were up at Engonia, which is about 100 k's sort of beyond Burke. And we happened to get in this night, and it was still raining at the time, and we got into the property and we didn't move for 6 weeks.
And you thought, what have I done?
Had no idea. The river had come up overnight, more so than even when we were there. I didn't even have a carton of milk. I've got 3 kids, and fortunately my brother-in-law rowed the boat across the river and bought us a stash of groceries. But we were stuck there. We couldn't go to school. The kids couldn't go to school for 6 weeks, and it was a pretty wide, eye-opening experience. Before COVID, yeah. Well before COVID. And I started to realise that this was a totally different lifestyle. All of the conveniences that I just assumed were, part of life were gone, and we grew a really raw and rewarding and beautiful lifestyle through that. Yeah.
Now, part of that journey was with your son Jackson, who had a medical condition that was really serious. That's where I met you, because you came to our little school out there at Birrabor and asked us, I think he was about 7 or 8, was he?
Yeah, I reckon about.
Could you take Jackson at our school? Can you tell us a bit of that?
So we were at Engonia. An opportunity for managing a property closer to Burke came through, and we felt like, well, with Jackson we were closer to medical attention. We were also closer to longer term schooling, because the primary school at Angonia only meant that the kids would be there till year 6. So we came to Burke, we had a look around, we sussed all the schools out. We were looking for a school that would be suitable for Jackson. He was wearing the big full leg calipers, then he used to fall and stumble a lot, and so we were thinking
Pretty frail,
he was
wasn't he?
very frail, yeah. And we were thinking we were looking for a school that didn't have much asphalt, so that when he fell he wouldn't have so much bark off him. And we went out to Peerabor School, and of course the infants teacher then, she had to take 3 kids into her class, so it was a big, you know, a big change and a big thing to take on, and I'm sure there was much prayer involved between everyone that was there at the time, but they accepted the enrolment of the boys, and that was, yeah, when our journey of faith began.
So, okay, so that's your own personal story, and you're walking along through life like a lot of people are, but suddenly the bigger story that I guess we've all got to come up against somewhere, we're like, why are we doing what we do? What's the meaning and purpose? And is there a God, and where does he fit into the picture? That suddenly came stronger into focus for you?
Very much so. You do just exist, I think, in life before you actually live in life, and I think it's the power of the Holy Spirit in us that gives us life, not just an existence. I had 5 kids by that time, and one of the mums at the school said to me, you know, surely, Jodie, you can't have 5 kids and not know the Lord. So she took me through Christianity Explained, and we met regularly for Bible studies, and that began my journey of knowing and loving God more and more.
So it wasn't just sort of just a mystical kind of thing, sort of, but it was also just learning sort of the facts, or learning the story, if you like, of Jesus, and how it all fitted into the picture.
Yep, and learning that I am part of that story, and that there's a place in that story for me too. So it become very personal for me. As I said, you do just go along in life without a real purpose. I found that, I guess that was what the Spirit does. It was giving me this desire to want to read more and want to learn more. And the more I read and learned, the more I felt like I loved, and it was just like it bubbles over.
Okay. So, but nevertheless, with Jackson, for example, he's still fragile. I mean, I was up on Mount Oxley last night, out 20-30 k's the other side of Burke, and I was reflecting on a story with. I made a bad decision. I was the principal of the school, and on a whim I said, okay, we'll take all the kids down the gully here, and it's pretty steep, and then up the other side, and we'll have a bit of an adventure, and we'll meet the bus over there, which seemed like a good idea at the time. But I got down the bottom of the slope, I looked across, and there's Jackson, you know, climbing down.
I remember the day.
My heart just went through my boots, and I thought, oh no, what have I done? I haven't done OH&S or anything. I'll probably get in trouble for this. But anyway, so I got with Jackson. I said, okay, Jax, we're going to have to just take it steadily, because he could only go a little way, and he wanted to be there with the other kids.
Yeah, he would have been with them. That's why you probably wouldn't have recognised him there among them.
So quiet, yeah. Anyway, we inched our way up the other side, and then the kids all cheered him home up onto the road, and you know, if he'd climbed Mount Everest, he wouldn't have been happier. And I was happier too. That time and think, oh, Jodie's going to kill me.
I got him here alive.
Yeah. But I did say to him at the time, Jax, you know, I've made a big mistake, and I apologise to you for that, because I've put your life at risk, and I dishonoured your family. But I think there's going to come a time, and it was coming fairly quickly, where he had to face a very big operation on his heart. And I said, you know, you're going to be on your own to some degree, because you can only walk so far with a bloke, and then you'll be on your own. Yeah. You're going to need to know that, you know, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And you might remember this day that, you know, we prayed our way up that hill together, and I think we talked about that. And I made him a medal later, and they had Jackson climb Mount Oxley, and I can do all things.
Philippians.
But for you, on your side, because Robin and I went down with you, and we sat with you in that hospital for that few days, and it was terrible. Like, if it would have been me, I would have been. It was really hard work, wasn't it? Like, knowing the seriousness of it.
Yeah, it is hard work, and it was hard work. Something that I vividly recall was I felt like I had this bubble of protection around me. So sometimes it didn't feel quite real, but I know it was the gift of prayer. I know it was for all the many people who were praying Jax through what we went through, and knowing that Jesus was with us no matter what.
Because before the operation, you were telling me it was a 50-50 call, maybe even not that he'd come through.
Yeah,
and
so
he had to make the decision?
That's right. The doctors said they could physically, cut him open it up and stitch it all back together and fix him physically, but his little body was that frail that would he survive it. So that was a big obstacle that Jackson had to face up to at 13 years of age, to say, okay, they can do this, but am I going to survive it? So as a family, we went through the story of understanding if Jax goes onto that table and doesn't come back off this side, is Jesus going to claim me as his? And that was a huge decision for him to, and thing for him to truly trust and believe and know. And he just said, yep, I'm going to have the surgery. It gives me some chance of survival. If I don't have the surgery, I'll surely die. But he was confident that if he didn't make it, back through the surgery, that he knew he was going home to where he was meant to be. So, I mean, as a parent, I couldn't have asked for any more than that. Break my heart.
And he did come through.
And he did come through it.
And now he's, 30, isn't he?
He's 30 years old, yeah. And he's had some pretty big calls on his life. He's actually stared death in the face numerous times. And even just the encounter of being broken into, by the vandals recently. He touched base with him a couple of weeks after. I said, how are you really doing, Jax? And, he said, nah, I'm fine. He said, I look at the things that I've been through in my life and God's been with me. He's seen me through some pretty rough stuff. And when I put it into perspective, he said it was 2 minutes out of my life and I survived it. And so he's thankful that God is through him no matter what. And I think that's one thing that we have learned. We can't control our circumstances. We will get tough stuff in this world. God tells us that in his word.
So rounding it off, Jodie, going back to that story on the wall in there, that family had to face the challenge of living in a
Hardship.
very lonely place, and I guess, as you've said in your story, finding meaning and purpose or a structure that's going to help you through. Now, a lot of people can be living in the Gold Coast and with lots of people around and
Comfortably,
but still not find a structure for their life. Can still be lonely and isolated. Yep.
There's definitely still a void, and until that void is filled by God, which is it's how he's created us, that hole is there, and unless he creates it, you can try and have all the other luxuries of life to fill it, but you'll never be content without the Spirit filling that gap. Yeah.
And now you're a journalist here at Burke. You're on the Western Herald and 2WEB. And what would you say to people about the power of stories and coming to Burke and learning these stories, for example?
Yeah, I would say, I would recommend do that. It takes something like that, getting away from the commercialism and getting down to nature, to the rawness of life, the things that matter. And take a walk along and read some of the stories and take the time to resonate with what they're saying. My suggestion is always don't read all of the words, but you'll find a quote or a little something that will speak deeply to your soul. Reflect on that, because from that your story will start to unravel.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Jodie, and it's been quite a journey for us all, this and things that I came to Burke 40 years ago, not realising how much Burke would teach me, and I'm not just blowing Burke's trumpet. It's not an easy place to live. It's got its challenges. Like today, it's probably going to be 40 degrees or something, but a brisk 40 degrees. But you're right, that when you open your heart, open your eyes, and open your ears to listen, to think, God is speaking all the time, everywhere. If you listen carefully, and He'll speak to you.
He will, and to slow down, and to just be still, because that's when you see His beauty. That's when He will speak to you.
Well, I was up on Mount Oxley last night, and for a sunset,
Spectacular.
speaks to your heart. It's brilliant. You know,
Great.
Ian and I were just saying, how good is this? You know, Venus was shining way up there, and sun setting, and that great plain you're looking over,
And I think that's
Yeah.
where the thankfulness and the gratitude does overflow from. We can see God in all His glory and
Mm.
all the beautiful things He's given to us
Yep.
in
I
the
d-
outback.
I was telling Ian, I took a Japanese fella up there years ago when I was a tourist officer, and we stood up there, and he's just staring. You know, he's looking around like this, and I'm thinking, this poor fella thinks he's done his money off. He's paid me $40 to bring him up here, and then he started to laugh, and he laughed for 5 minutes. He's just laughing and laughing, and I'm thinking,
What's happening here?
what's happening here? And I finally said to him, so
How you doing?
what's the story? And he said, I am moved, you know.
Yeah.
And I think he probably came from a city of 10 million.
Yep.
And here he was standing
he's
on Mount
used to the
Oxley
commotion.
seeing nothing.
Yeah.
Well, not
yeah.
nothing, but,
But
open
space.
space, big sky, you know,
Yeah.
and this grandeur there. And, you know, it spoke to him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, God does speak to us.
Okay, well, thanks,
Sure.
Jodie, for
Thank
that.
you,
And I think
Paul.
we've avoided the mowers and the
I think we have.
whippersnippers.
Yeah. I think we finally
Must
got
be time
there.
for another cup of coffee.
Just hope that this has all
Yeah.
worked.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you.